Well, first of all, Dr. Eger, I just want you to know how humbled and honored I am to meet with you and that you would give me the time. In researching my book, The Haynes Hierarchy of Hope and Happiness, I came across your story, and I was impressed with the story. But after reading your book, The Choice, I can honestly say I am totally awed. The last time I think I was ever so awed was when I was in the Navy. I was in the Navy during the Vietnam War, but I was never deployed. And I had the honor of escorting Commander Grace Hopper, who is considered the godmother of computer programming. And she was, at that time, she was not quite your age, but she was 80 at the time. And I had the honor of escorting her, and that's the only time I can ever imagine that I was ever in such awe. But I thank you so much for this opportunity. I just had a few questions I wanted to ask. So much of it I've already gotten from the book, but I just wanted to get a little bit of a more personal. In my book that I'm writing, The Hierarchy of Hope and Happiness, the first level is hope. And what I do is I try to help the individual identify what level of happiness they are. And it's loosely based upon Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because I find that you have to have certain needs in order to have hope and happiness. So my very first level is hope. But then I have below level, I have despair. And despair is when you have no more than one of those basic needs of love or shelter or food. And so it was like God led me to read your story, because I cannot imagine anyone ever coming from such a level of despair to become the person that you are today and to have helped the people. So were there times at Auschwitz in which you felt you would never be able to reach hope? I think as long as a person is in despair, if they can just feel like they can just stretch far enough to grasp hope, then they do have something to live for. Were there ever times at Auschwitz in which you felt that you could not reach hope, and that if you did have hope, what gave you that hope? Was it family? Was it your ambition to do something afterwards, or was it even revenge?
Well, I said to myself in Auschwitz, if I survive today, then tomorrow I'll be free. I think tomorrow gave me that hope in hopelessness, because my boyfriend told me that I have beautiful eyes and beautiful hands.
Last thing he said to you.
That was one thing. I discovered God within me that told me that there is no such thing as hopelessness. So that God is within me today. That no matter what happens, I know I'm going to make it. Excuse me. I'm recovering from pneumonia.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gee, let's see.
Let me take
I'm
some.
getting you water. I'm getting it.
Let's see. Gee, I'll think about that tomorrow. That sounds like another lovely lady I knew named Scarlett O'Hara.
That's right. There'll always be a tomorrow. There'll always be a tomorrow.
And you'll probably like to know that Gone with the Wind is truly one of my favorites also. And
It's
I
mine
actually
too.
named my daughter.
It's wonderful. It's
Charlie.
wonderful, brilliantly written. Each character is it's very Jungian actually. I think she's the classic hysterical woman.
A little
Yes.
before her time.
But you see, the trouble is with women or with anybody, when you put your whole life into someone else's hand, it's better if you're a whole person before you get married, hopefully marrying a whole person, W-H-O-L-E, rather than waiting for someone to make you happy. I think happiness is very external. I like to believe that we're born with joy and we're born with love, and that, I think, is something that is given to us by God.
And you're right, it is inherent. And it's a shame that we are born, I mean, just all you have to do is look at a child. We are born with that, but yet it's our own allowing the negative influences come in that takes that joy away from us. Were there ever any times at Auschwitz that you actually prayed to go to sleep and not wake up?
No,
You always had the,
not at all, not at all. Didn't even come to me. Actually, I was able to change hatred with God's help to pity. I looked at the guards and I actually prayed how come that they gave up their life to this person, Hitler, and killing children and throwing them in a gas chamber. I felt so sorry for them and hoping that they have a conscience and that I am innocent and they're the ones who really are the prisoners. So it's the way you think about things, and I looked at even today Auschwitz as an opportunity for me to discover my inner resources, something that was within me, and it is within me to have a choice. I refused to be a victim. I was victimized. It's what was done to me. It's not who I am. I have a story, but I'm not my story.
and that,
Lots of things happened to me before Auschwitz, and lots of things are still happening to me. I have yet to arrive.
and that is a perfect segue to my next question. I'm a civil engineer by training. I attended Virginia Tech and was a civil engineer by training. So my 4 years of college was filled with formulas, but the greatest formula I've ever found is the formula E plus R equals O. E is the events of your life. You didn't choose to be born Jewish in the time of Hitler. You did not choose to be sent to Auschwitz. You did not choose to have your back broken, ending any future you ever had in gymnastics or dance. But as long as your R to those events was to hide them away in Pandora's box, your sense of acknowledging your past, I'm sure your O would have been significantly different. And you answered that perfectly. You took the power out of the hands of those guards. You took the power back by your response. Would I be correct? You already had that basis of understanding that, and that was a lot based upon what your mother had told you. They can't take that away, what you have in your mind. But
And my ballet master told me that God built me in such a magnificent way. He used a word I didn't understand. He said, all your ecstasy comes from inside out.
which is, you know, you see that so often. A ballet dancer can have all the perfect technique.
And I was still the dancer who was able to somehow find the gift in everything. I was very ill in November. I was very ill. I had a surgery, something with my small intestines. I was very, very ill, and the doctor I was incubated. I was put this thing in my mouth, and I couldn't do anything, nothing at all. And one day he said, you know, tomorrow I'm going to take out that thing, tomorrow. But I didn't tell him, I don't know if I have a tomorrow. because I used up everything. And tomorrow came and he said, you know, Edie, I'm gonna wait one more day. And I didn't tell him, I don't know if I have a one more day. But then I said to myself, I did it in Auschwitz, I can do it here. See, it ain't over. And Auschwitz was a way for discovery. Not recovery, but discovery, that I somehow had still the power to choose the way I will, not to react, because when you react you don't think but how to respond. I actually teach my patients never ever to react, because then you don't think.
You overreact.
You overreact, and you don't like something in someone else. It's time for you to look at that in you, and that's why I say don't call me shrink, call me stretch. You know? And Viktor Frankl is a wonderful mentor of mine and colleague who said about that everything can be taken away from a human being except your last choice, how to choose your attitude towards that. And I think cognitive psychology has a great deal to do with that. It's too good to think about your thinking, because your thinking creates your feelings.
And that was kind of what I was leading up to. Even though you had you carried a lot of that with you already from Auschwitz, do you feel like that when you first read Viktor Frankl, that is when you realized that it was okay for you to respond the way that you have? You had a part of it already in you, but he helped you bring that response where no longer did you have to keep that within you.
Yes, he had the verbal capacity that I did not, because I didn't want to tell you, because I didn't want you to feel sorry for me.
But he was very accomplished before he went to Auschwitz.
He was an accomplished MD, and I was a 16-year-old teenager in love. Yes.
Other than your grandchildren and the work that you currently do, and let me just so wholeheartedly thank you for the work that you do with PTSD. I'm a Vietnam veteran.
Because I work with Vietnam vets, and yes, I can tell you that PTSD is not post-traumatic stress disorder. See, you came home and now we punish you. Now we give you a diagnosis. No, it's a post-traumatic stress reaction to the loss, to something you were not prepared for.
You had that survivor remorse, and in a way I do also, in a much less significant way than you did, because I'm very proud to be able to say that I served my country during the Vietnam War in the U.S. Navy. And speaking of the Navy,
you're my hero.
Speaking of the Navy, I spent 3.5 years shore duty at Norfolk. You have more flight time and ship time than I had in 3.5 years when you landed on the Nimitz. So I'm also admire you that you actually flew in a bomber, a fighter, and landed on the Nimitz.
I did.
But
and the way you land,
you come to a screeching halt.
A 17-year-old kid picks up that $1 million plane, and we don't write about all the young people who are so brilliant.
And you hope he didn't get a Dear John letter the day before.
Oh gosh.
But so I do want to.
Well, I also slept in a captain's bed, you know.
But I can't applaud you enough, because at this point in my life, I'm coming across so many friends for Vietnam who are suffering from PTSD.
And they're
the
still
work
there.
you do
And they're still there.
is
They're
so
not able to move beyond it. And I really am hoping that you have a good support system there that,
unfortunately, we do not have you.
yeah,
I would praise God if we could have someone like you.
someone like me would be very useful to you. So my message to them is that change is very difficult, but if you don't change, you don't grow. So change is synonymous with growth, and we have a tendency to always go back what is familiar. So if they could just really see that that was then, and that we cannot change, but you cannot forgive without rage. You gotta go through the rage, but don't get stuck in there. It's unfair what was done to you. People were spitting at you when you came home, but that was then. So forgiveness, it doesn't have to do that you forgive the people who were spitting at you. It has to do with you freeing yourself and not allowing them to take residence in your body. See, I don't have the Nazi that I am forgiving. No, I'm not allowing the Nazis to hold me a hostage of the past. It's a selfish act. It's a gift that I give to me. So please give that gift to you, and don't allow people to, or anyone outside of you, to hold you hostage or prisoner.
We have a very dear friend that goes to church with us, and he is really suffering greatly, and his wife is probably suffering even more.
Is the wife who is suffering, the people who live around you are suffering, and find out what's good about it. Because now you are the victim and you can get by. Maybe you don't have to help so much in the kitchen because, that's okay, my darling. You just stayed with your misery. Every behavior satisfies the need. And it's better to be a survivor than a victim, because victims will always find the victimizers. And so you can just say, yeah, whatever happened to me, I made it. You could have taken your life. I was very suicidal after I was liberated, because I got up in the morning and I realized my parents are not coming home.
Why am
And
I?
reality hit, so I didn't say, what now? Why me? Why is it happened to me? But then, I think God spoke to me and said, if you kill yourself now, you're going to be a coward. And I decided that I'm going to be for something rather than fighting against.
Well,
And that's how I am who I am today. I never forget the past. I may never overcome the past, but I came to terms with it. That's my cherished wound. You will never ever forget Vietnam. But if you still live there and you set up household there, you're not a Christian, because Jesus said you go through the valley of the shadow of death and love your neighbor as thyself, not better than yourself. So you can't love anyone unless you love you. Self-love is self-care. It's not narcissistic. So tell your friend that his suffering is a choice.
and it's especially rough on him because he was a medic, and apparently medics saw a lot of
Yes,
horrors.
you never forget the people that you thought that you could save their lives and you did not, and you want to accept that you're only human and God is holding the wheel and surrender, and I do that, just to surrender that we humans will make mistakes and guilt is in the past, and all you have to say to you, make it very easy. If I knew then what I know now, I would have done things differently. That's it. You don't have to go to psychologists and be in therapy, but it's very good to have a good support system.
Now, other than your grandchildren,
Great-grandchildren.
and,
I
well,
have 4 generations. That's my best revenge to Hitler. And you know what else? My book is translated in German,
oh,
and it's selling in Germany. There
Oh,
is
that
justice in the world.
that is a blessing.
Isn't it a blessing?
Other than your grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and the work that you do, especially with the PTSD,
That's right.
what are your other passions of life?
I love to dance. You know, my man that I dance with comes from Nebraska, and he is a civil engineer,
Oh.
like you. His name is Cook, Gene Cook.
Now, your relationship is probably like my wife and mine.
Yeah.
Being a civil engineer, I have the technique. I can remember, we do ballroom dancing.
I do too.
And
That's what I do.
I can remember the steps better than she can remember the steps. My only problem is I have no idea the rhythm to do those steps in. So she has all the rhythm, and being a civil engineer, I have the technique. But so you
The
do.
trouble is with engineers that you're up here.
Yes.
You want to do everything just right.
Yeah, and want to watch my
It
feet.
doesn't matter. Just whatever. You know, my friend asked me, is this a samba or a rumba and a foxtrot? It doesn't matter. We do the same thing, whatever it is. You know, and so just have fun.
Now, do you enjoy cruises?
I've never been to a cruise.
Now, my wife, I've already given my wife permission because
I've never
I'm
been
8
to a
years
cruise.
older, so if I go before she does,
Yeah.
she has my permission to go on cruises without me, so she'll holler at you, and because I promise you, you'll have all the ballroom dancing you want on the cruises.
Yes. Well, that is really something that people are so afraid of, but if you're afraid to die, you never live. I am not, I'm very grateful to God that I am 90 years old and I live in the present and I think young.
We travel quite a bit.
Good for
And,
you.
Several people have asked us,
She dresses you nice. I like your shirt.
several people have told us, with all the flying that we do, aren't you afraid of dying? And I said, no, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of not living. To me, in being a financial planner, everything is based upon risk. And to me, the
That's a good
risk
four-letter
of
word.
not living
Yes,
is
that
so much
you're right.
worse than dying.
Every moment, actually, the whole life is just one day because that morning sunshine doesn't come back. So I am at the evening time of my life and every moment is precious.
Your back injury ended your future as a professional dancer or gymnast, but if you
I was
hadn't,
teaching dancing.
if you had not become a renowned psychologist, what do you think would have brought you to to look at you as such a blessing? You are at the apex of what my hierarchy is, and that's elation. You glow. You have such happiness that just pours out of you. So if you had not been a dancer or gymnast or become a renowned psychologist, what do you think you might have done that would have brought you such happiness? Would teaching? Would you?
I am a teacher. I actually call myself a guide, that I take people from one side of the bridge to another, from darkness to light, from prison to freedom. And the biggest freedom is, when you recognize that actually the prison is in your own mind and the key is in your pocket.
Amen.
So it's up to you to regain your strength. And this is Easter, you know. This is what we are told, that something has to die and then in order to live, that Jesus died, and then so you can resurrect and you can have a whole new beginning. So tell your wife you would like to marry her again and have a new beginning, and take her on a honeymoon, and see how you can truly empower each other with your differences.
We are Protestant, but our church, every Easter, we celebrate Cedar because we feel like it is such an important, and we even have a foot washing. And some of those events are just, we go through the Cedar meal, and that is such
Methodists are fun people, very different from the Baptists, you know, not as serious.
Dr. Frankel stated that people that were able to find meaning in their inner lives were the ones who had the greatest chance of surviving the camps and suffering the least damage to their inner lives.
Yes.
What if you could turn back time? Hitler never became more than a modestly accomplished artist. You medaled in your first Olympics, and you went on to become an accomplished ballerina. But by this stage in your life, you're no longer in the Olympics and you're no longer a ballet dancer. What do you think you might have found to do with your life that you would have come close to helping the tens of thousands of people that you have helped in your life?
Well, I was a third daughter in my family, and my two sisters were singing songs about me, that I'm so ugly and puny and I'm never gonna find a husband, and I was cross-eyed. So I think God put me in a family to discover my inner resources, that I was able to really go to Auschwitz and have that power within me that no Nazi could take away from me. So I very much am grateful the way God put me in a family, that I really learned to be with myself. And this is what I guide people to, not to wait for someone else to make you happy or someone else to come and liberate you, that you are a take charge person. So I would probably be a guide of some kind. I am also a certified teacher and counselor before I got my doctorate.
And was Teacher of the Year.
I was Teacher of the Year, that's right. So I think we all are teachers in some sense, that we have to be very generous with ourselves, because God only made one of us. There'll never be another me or you. So many people can do what you can do, but not the way you can do it. So let's celebrate the uniqueness, the one-of-a-kind, authentic self.
And if you had never accomplished anything more than being a teacher, I would still be in awe. As a financial planner, most of our clients are educators, and being a civil engineer, I decided I wanted to have a little bit of experience and have a little empathy for what teachers went through. So one of the gentlemen at our church was the principal.
We don't pay enough to teachers.
One of the members of our church was the principal of the local high school. And so I went to him and asked him, could I substitute teach at the school? And he said, yeah, I'd love for you to sign up. And so I figured, they would have to evaluate me. Well, the next day he called me and asked me to come in the following morning and teach science for an 8th grade class. And I thought, well, this is perfect, being a civil engineer. I went in, and it's supposed to be all day. I went in at lunchtime, and I said, Ron, take my name off that damn list, and don't you ever call me again. there was no way I could have ever been a teacher. So if you had never done any more in your life than to retired with 40 years as a teacher, I would have been in total awe of you. When did you first learn that it was not only okay, and you kind of led into this before, I truly believe, like when you're on a plane and they're giving you the flight instructions, and they tell you in a case of emergency the gas mask will drop, and if you have a child with you, put your mask on first before you try to assist the child. When do you think in your life that you realized that it was not only okay, but it was necessary for you to love you?
I think in Auschwitz you had to move beyond the me, and commit yourself to each other, because all we had was each other then. So when Dr. Mengele gave me a piece of bread, I shared it with the girls, and those are the girls who saved my life on the death march when I was going to be shot, when I was stopped. So it is really, yes, self-love is self-care. I think it was very necessary for us to move beyond our needs and commit ourselves to each other, because that's all we had then, and that's all we have now is each other.
I think that story was probably the one
Thank you.
that, as soon as I read that, I said to myself, this is a very, very wonderful person, because I can only imagine what that loaf of bread would have tasted like and how you hungered for the bread.
I'd also like to tell you that there were good people among the guards. I was interviewed by Larry King, and he said that those people were never kind. Well, I met one when I stole the carrots for my sister, and I heard the clicking about 3 times, and then he turned the gun around and pushed me inside, and the following day he came in and wanted to know who dared to leave the premises, and when I crawled to him, he gave me a little loaf of bread. This is April 1945, when the German people are starving too. I wish I could meet that man today. So let's not generalize. Not all Germans are Nazis. So 12 years of Nazis doesn't make all Germany. I think it's very dangerous for us to generalize and put the finger out there, because yes, it's true, many will come back to you. So I really respect your work as well, and you and I are guides that we show people that there is a choice whether to be a survivor, not just a survivor, but a thriver, and not a victim of anything or anyone at any time.
I know you're a fan of Martin Seligman, and
Oh yes,
that-
and I am a very much promoter of positive psychology, but unfortunately, sometimes we're born and in our genes are, I think, 40%. The rest of it is the attitude you take. So there is your genes, there is the environment, and I think the third, the manner in which I choose to respond to the other two.
now I know I actually have one of my blogs that is called Choosing Happiness, and I refer to the fact that there are some inherent genes that you have to overcome, but I maintain that every person can choose happiness. It's a matter of being exactly like you were saying. You have to look within, and it just, my prayer is that I in one day through my book and through my website will reach and assist 10% of the people that you have benefited in your life. And I know, like so many survivors, you had the survivor remorse, but I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that at those moments, starting from you sharing that bread, God knew and He directed the things that you did, because He knew the girls that you shared that bread with were going to lift you up and carry you so that you would not have been killed, because God knew from that moment that you were going to touch the life of people in such a wonderful way. And I just want to thank you so much
Yes.
and tell you
Welcome.
what
You
a
can have a prayer.
true blessing. Would you like to pray with me?
Yes, please.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for this day. And God, we know that you know from the time we're born each thing that's going to happen to us. And you know everything that we have the potential of being. And God, I just thank you so much that 70 years ago, you looked at this frail young girl that probably did not even have any reason to survive what she went through. But God, you saw the potential that she had, and you knew that there would come a day where she would draw from that well of misery and the ordeal that she went through, because like no one else, she would have the empathy. She would be able to know what was the cause of the many, many soldiers that have come back. She was able to look into their hearts, and you knew that her life needed to be spared. And God, I can't thank you enough that you spared that life, and I cannot thank you enough that Dr. Eger has taken the time from her very busy schedule to just let me have a few moments of it. We thank you so much. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. You know, I have a son that is disabled, and he doesn't have time to be a victim. You know, he goes to Washington, he fights for the disabled. In the city, they have to change things around so people could go there with a wheelchair. And they said, oh, besides, I come from good stock. My mother is a survivor. So I think that's a good question to ask. How do we want to be remembered? And I want to be remembered that I did everything in my power to see to it that your children and grandchildren will never ever experience